talked about earlier. But we can refer back to any of those other documents. And you're all off mute at this point, so feel free to interject or ask questions. But why don't we start with just on the bubble diagram here, sort of identifying what you envision, what you think are the key assets that exist in White Rock today. And just everybody go ahead and speak up whenever you'd like.
Hey Dan, this is Ryan. I'll just get us started. You know,
let me just, sorry Ryan, but
sure.
A lot of people look like they're trying to talk, but their mute buttons are on, so you need to click off your mute button as well. Go ahead, Ryan.
And yeah, so this exercise is really just to get us start thinking as a group about what's currently there, and then the next exercise we'll start thinking bubble diagram and land uses and footprints and all that. And so just to get us started, you know, I think one that we've already talked about, you know, in the presentation today is certainly that in the old 2008 plan, what's happened in the last 12 years is that the library was that big civic project that exists today. It's not going anywhere in the time frame of our plan. So I definitely identified that as a really a key existing asset for White Rock.
And a key investment that's been made so far. And hopefully it will become more of a stimulus for additional development at that intersection. So, I mean, other assets could be things that you know, continue to exist from before the plan as well, like the post office and Smith's. I just want to throw those out. The municipal center, other important sort of community assets that are in the White Rock area that we can build around.
Hi, this is Eric. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Sorry, I don't have video, but my computer doesn't have video.
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, good. My input to that first comment would be that when you drive into White Rock, the first things you sort of see are 2 gas stations, and then most of it is the training center of Los Alamos Labs. But then as you look further down the road, the most interesting thing that pops out is definitely the visitor center that we have. And then going right across the street is the library and actually activity center, which our kids use quite a bit, which is right next door to the library there. So I like to see the focal points of being the visitor center, the library, the activity center. But then as your eyes go back towards the gas stations, it'd be nice to see more, I would call it eye-catching things that sort of draw you into the center of town.
Very good. When you mentioned the activity center, I know it's a building off the library there. I haven't had a chance, given COVID, to come into town since it's been developed. So what is the activity center? What is the function of the building?
It's run by the Los Alamos Activity Youth Center, both in Los Alamos and White Rock. And there is a space for kids after school between 3 and 6 p.m. Every day, where they can go, they can have a safe place to hang out. There's people there to sign them in, sign them out. They have activities that are in that little open space back there. They have little forts. They have little dirt paths they kind of walk around in. Right in that whole area, that's actually a disc golf right there, right where you're highlighting. So that whole area is really nice for that activity center for use for those kids. Oh yeah, there's pool tables, there's a snack bar, there's lots of things that kids can use to get them to get together and network together and just have kid-friendly activities there.
Great, thanks for that clarification.
Hey Dan, one thing I just thought about that we might want to do before we get too far into this is do a round of introductions. There's about 13 people in the group, just so that everybody kind of knows who's here and what their kind of interest in downtown is.
go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Sure. So my name is Jessica Lawless. I'm an urban planner with Decker Parish Sabatini. So I'm part of the project team working on both the master plan and the code update.
And I'm Dan Guimond, and I'm a economist with Economic and Planning Systems, EPS for short, and we're a sub-consultant working on the plan with DPS, doing the market and economic and financial parts of the project. Nancy, you want to go?
Yes, I'm Nancy Bliss, and I live walkable distance to the area we're talking about. And we have family here beyond ourselves, so we have a lot of interest in this.
Great. Margaret?
Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Ambrosino, Senior Planner with the county government. I'm assisting Ryan on the project, and I am working on a project right now in White Rock on the planning side. So yeah, that's my interest and why I wanted to participate tonight, just to kind of hear everyone's ideas.
Great. Randall?
Yeah, so I'm Randall Reddy, one of your county councilors in Los Alamos, and so just was interested in seeing the how the process was going to work tonight. And I don't live in White Rock, but I'm very interested in seeing what we can do for both White Rock and Los Alamos to improve the downtowns.
Great. Ryan, I didn't mean to skip you, but I think you already introduced yourself, right?
Sure did.
Then let me just, Ryan, can I throw you in the other group so we have a county person in both groups?
Sure.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm just gonna do that really quickly. I'm gonna take Ryan from us and throw him over there.
You're really moving people around there, Katrina.
I know, sorry, like, and I'm Katrina, just really quickly, I'm hopping around between the groups to make sure that everything works, but I'm gonna be quiet now. And I'm with the project team.
Great. Eric, rather?
Was that me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm Eric Tibbetts, and I'm a resident here in Los Alamos, and I'm very interested in participating to revitalize White Rock. And my wife's also here on the same phone call. Go ahead, Wendy.
Hi, I'm Wendy Dreesen, and I've lived here since the early 80s, so I definitely have a vested interest in seeing downtown get revitalized.
Great. John Bliss?
Yeah, so I'm John Bliss. I live with Nance, and we're fairly close.
Okay.
And we've been here since the late 80s, and with some time back here as a student 10 years before that for 3 or 4 years. So been familiar with the area for quite a long time.
Keith Wilson.
Hi there, my name's Keith Wilson. I'm an employee of Los Alamos County in the Public Works Department, so I'm primarily on here just observing. Hopefully I'll be project managing a bunch of projects that come out of this process.
We hope you will as well. And Nancy Bartlett. Hit that mute button, Nancy.
Hey.
There we go.
I turned my sound off because we're getting a new furnace, and the man that's installing it is drilling into the wood and right next to my computer.
Okay.
My husband, John, is listening. We moved into Pajarito Acres in the early 60s. We moved to Los Alamos in 1962 and lived off Sycamore until we built our house. And I love living in Pajarito Acres, and I love the services that are provided by the commercial people in White Rock. And they've been especially wonderful to have during the pandemic. The grocery store that is small but follows the rules what the governor put out. Metzger's, I spend most of my money at Metzger's with a handyman that's been fixing our house since it's more than 50 years old. And we use the credit union in White Rock. And I love the library. I love the visitor center and the improvements that were made by the various committees. I love driving to White Rock and looking at the Sangre de Cristos as we come down the hill. I'm sad that the houses that are being built in A19 are not possibly solar connected. And those people living there will not see the beauty of the view from their homes. So I hope that's protected as we develop White Rock.
Okay,
and
thanks,
I would,
Nancy.
I'm too long, okay.
Let's just go around real quickly, and you can stay on mute and then join back in when you have something to say. We appreciate that. Anne Laurent, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name's Anne Laurent. I'm the Public Works Director for Los Alamos County. I was formerly the Community and Economic Development Director. I worked a lot with the White Rock Master Plan and Implementation Committee on some of the projects that Nancy just mentioned, but I'm pretty excited to kind of see the next phases and next steps of priorities come out of this conversation. So thank you.
Great. Nice to hear your voice again, Anne.
This is Roger Waterman. My family's been here since the late 40s, and is my mic on?
Yep.
Okay.
We can hear you.
And my dad was one of the developers of the White Rock Commercial Center. Now it used to be a primary shopping center, and of course we have an interest in White Rock, and we also have a 70-year interest in Los Alamos.
Great. Good to hear your voice again, Roger, too.
Thanks, Dan.
Did I get everybody? I think I covered all the screens that I see on my screen here. Okay, well, we'll go back to where we were starting in terms of anybody else want to add anything else on the assets, the key assets that exist in White Rock today?
Yeah, this is John Bliss. So just following up what Nancy Bartlett said a minute ago, I mean, Metzger's and Smith's and the post office make White Rock functional. So, I mean, you can get most of what you need. We might like other amenities and everything, but those are really
those are essential services, right?
I would add to that, this is John Boltice. I'd add to that the 2 restaurants that we have that are pretty key, I think, to my family at least. Rigoberto's, and then the, I'm blanking on the Pig and Fig up in the corner. So.
Right, got those.
Someone mentioned earlier, let me see, is my mic off?
Yeah, no, you're on.
Someone mentioned earlier that we don't quite have a large enough community to serve for Smiths to stay with us. What they don't realize is there are many people from the Hill that come down to our Smiths to shop. I'm sure this may be a surprise, but it's a much more user-friendly Smiths, and they prefer to shop down here. Which means
I didn't mean to say that it's not big enough to support the Smiths you have, because it certainly is, or they would have closed it a long time ago. So they probably are getting shoppers from the Hill to help justify keeping the store open, as well as I think a lot of lab commuters who are going by there on the way home.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some discussion earlier about the center of gravity in the community, and it's not that there's only one center of gravity, but we want to really try and identify where those key points are, those key intersections are in the White Rock community.
Does everybody know what we mean by center of gravity when we say that, or does that need any clarification? And it's essentially the main center of activity that you see for White Rock.
And you know, I think historically it was, in my memory anyway, it was always somewhere between Smith's and the post office. You know, after the shopping center really went to a business location. But I think things, it seems to me things are shifting or changing, or at least there are becoming multiple centers of gravity that exist.
Yeah, I would say that there's actually two. One by the Smiths in the library, and then the other one is actually over by, it's not the greatest center of gravity, but as you enter and exit town, it's where Rover hits the main State Road 4 by the gas stations where the new bank is. I mean, that's where you're sort of just welcomed into town. So it's sort of becomes a center of gravity just by the nature of how everybody sort of, well, not everybody, but a certain percentage enters into White Rock.
So it's not only a center of gravity, it's a gateway into White Rock.
Yeah, it would be nice to have some kind of gateway. Even though we do have the gas stations, the whole strip area has been improved and enhanced both by the county and the commercial owners. And I'm very proud of it. And I enjoy going through White Rock, but I would like, the Art and Public Places Board considered putting in some kind of a gateway, but not, they didn't proceed with that idea, but maybe something would come up that would show where you are as you turn around go around the bend, and then, you know, you're there. And I'm not sure what I want, but I want something that's artistic, that says where you, not just big signs, like normal signs, but something that catch your eye. The White Rock is our treasure. It's an iconic landmark to the residents who understand what it is, advertising the events of the people who live in White Rock. And it's a delight. I don't know if that could be enhanced in some way.
So are you thinking that gateway component would happen around this center of gravity here that we just identified?
Yes.
Or further? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And then just going back to this center of gravity that we identified, in terms of the scale, how, like, what is kind of the extent of that area that you're all thinking about?
So I think it ought to move north and encompass the visitor center maybe, and maybe a little bit larger to get, yeah.
Maybe a little larger to go down and include Smith's even.
Right, yeah.
Like that.
About like that, or even bigger?
I think that, right. That's good, because isn't there going to be a splash pad there soon?
Yeah, so that's actually a little bit lower. So if we like went a little bigger, we would incorporate that. So it'd be about there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what other, within those two centers of activity, what other types of uses might be added in there? I mean, the splash pad is something that's on the table, but there may be others that aren't. Do others have ideas for additions to either the park side of development there, or on the other side of Sherwood, some additional commercial uses that could be put in there? And then the other location for commercial development would be across from the visitor center there at the entryway to Mirador.
So it has to be successful commercially. So just what I would desire, but I think some sort of a coffee shop or a coffee and sandwich shop that you can, walk over to or drop in on somewhere near. I was thinking of it more like in the Longview area, but in the center of gravity area would be fine. And we've got visitors across the street, and so we need that. I would like to see that in White Rock.
I think one thing that we've seen is that for the commercial uses to survive, they need to be closer to the main arterials. That the interior along Longview is difficult for most commercial uses at this point.
Yeah, they're sort of set back from the road on that. So I would agree, like the old Pizza Hut that's there and the pizzeria, they're nicely positioned, but they just sort of don't stand out as a place to thrive on a business center because they're sort of off the business circles you got.
Right. So another question that was identified is what sort of parcels of land do you feel are opportunities for redevelopment? Where are the most either underutilized or blighted properties that you would like to see redeveloped?
So I don't know about blighted, but what I just realized looking at this map that the fire station was put on the highway and there's a lot of space behind it. So why isn't that parking lot moved behind the fire station? And you'd have some more real estate on the highway with some other vacant land next to it, looks like, but there should be a space there.
I can't remember, is the parking on the...
Parking's here.
Right there, okay, yeah. I can see that would be well-located property, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and so there's, based on some of the discussions we've had in the visioning workshops, this kind of red dashed line here identified some areas, so that's already included there, but I'll mark it on here as well.
This is Margaret. I'm just curious if anyone from the county recalls when the fire station was developed. Were there any like topographical issues with that northern area that John was talking about, next, like to the back of the fire station?
This is Roger. When the gas station came up for discussion, I was on the council when the county took over gas services from the Atomic Energy Commission and the lab. And I tried to encourage, the major thing about a fire station is that the rapidity of service. And this fire station number 4 is a major element to the backside of the laboratory. And I tried to encourage it to be put up have DOE property up at the entrance to the laboratory, at the intersection of the entrance to the laboratory, and to use that corner for the fire station. It would have been faster response to the lab and just as responsive to White Rock community, and not used a primary frontage on Highway 4. But it didn't happen that way, and I think because DOE had some strong feelings about how that land was going to be used, and it wasn't county property, I don't believe, at that time. So I think, well, maybe it was county property. The fire station used to be on Rover, but it was a very minimal station and wasn't adequate to service the laboratory. So it wasn't, from my perspective, it wasn't a good decision for the White Rock community, and it wasn't the best decision for the laboratory, but it is what it is. The terrain behind it is difficult. So I'm not sure what can be done about that, but the frontages are the only valuable pieces of commercial property in terms of a retail center or a lifestyle center or a pedestrian center for White Rock. And the area back behind the village used to be a very dynamic little shopping center, but as the population got older, the Smiths expanded from the White Rock Center to its current location, then a lot of the services and things that were provided by the shopping center and by the village couldn't sustain themselves any longer. So, and we also had an Ed's, a small supermarket there before the Smiths moved. So the retail world is changing a lot, but exposure is still the number one ingredient to being convenient to the town of White Rock and to the traffic on State Road 4.
Are there any of those retail commercial buildings on the south side of Highway 4 there vacant currently?
So I think this is John Boltice again. I think the pizza place has a large parking lot that fronts the 4, prime for redevelopment. I think all the accesses along Rover and Sherwood and 4 where there's not current development, the parking lot's kind of facing that very valuable commercial frontage. When you're talking about redevelopment again, the county, I think, did a great job with citing the library at the corner of Sherwood and NM4 with the parking set off to the side. Mm-hmm. That I think would help a lot, you know, getting those buildings closer to the street so it feels much more like a main street rather than, you know, the entrance to, you know, a large big box store. So that could happen on Sherwood by the Smiths area. It could happen where the lab offices are off Rover. It could happen on NM4 by the pizza area, and other smaller commercial parcels there too, where the new housing development is. And, just that concept of providing a smaller setback from the commercial arteries.
The new housing, are you referring to Mirador or something else?
No, Mirador. So Mirador has some commercial parcels built into the plan.
Right.
Again, you know, if we could get away from, and I know that's not how it currently is reflected, but get away from having all the parking against the streets and put the buildings up along the street fronts. Right. It just creates much more of the kind of pictures that we saw during the last open house when you showed us the different cities that were doing downtown redevelopment. There were no big, huge parking lots like that along any of those streets. So I think that's something as a master planning idea, it's something that should be considered.
Very good.
You were circling squares right across from the Del Norte Credit Union. That's in the plan there. Yeah, that whole area right there, next south of the Del Norte Credit Union, are 2 parcels of land. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry, I think I missed one. Was this the other parking lot that we had talked about earlier? I think John, you were listing a couple, and I just want to make.
Yeah, that whole area that's kind of in the dashed line there.
Yeah,
is kind of prime for that.
Okay. You know, one thing that could be done with that that building that on Bonnie View and Highway 4. No, not that one. That one It is an old McDonald's prior to the pizza place, and it would make a great coffee shop, sandwich shop, like John mentioned, with a playground, so that on those snowy mornings, moms could bring their kids and have their cup of coffee or their lunch, and the kids could play. Since it was originally designed for that, it would be an easy conversion.
So it already has an existing like indoor play area?
It has the area, the equipment is currently gone, but it has the open space that would accommodate that.
And that's that building right there.
Yeah, it's that vacant one.
Mm-hmm. And what's this one right here?
Where are you?
I can't see your mouse, Dan.
Oh, you can't. Okay, the one basically on Bonnie View, but to the south of the vacant building.
That has been both a bank and a veterinarian and possibly other things.
Yeah.
Should probably have a V on it now. I think it's vacant now.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So if that is the case, if both of those buildings are vacant and you've got all that parking, that looks like it really is potentially a site that could be an opportunity site, a redevelopment site of some kind. Is that accurate? Okay, very good. Now, one of the things
I need to. This is Roger, and it's just a matter of process and what's going on. But the pizzeria used to have a place up at the museum property, and didn't do well there. So this property, which is actually now in 4 lots. 1, 2, 3, 4, and something is in foreclosure, and the property's been listed for a long time, but eventually there's a legal process going on for this property.
I'm sorry, which property is that?
The pizzeria and the parking lot next to it.
Is that this one or this?
It's the one that you've marked as vacant.
Okay, all right.
Okay, we'll look into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
It came up in the visioning workshop a little bit about locations or opportunities for additional housing, and considering both some of the prototypes that were shown earlier tonight in the workshop. So it could be anything from for sale townhouses for workforce housing, or apartments for more service level populations. Are there good sites within the White Rock downtown area for infill housing that we should be highlighting?
What about Longview?
Is there a particular parcel you had in mind, or everything?
Pretty much.
So like,
I mean, what's some of it's vacant currently, right? Some of it's been demolished.
Yeah.
Yes.
So all these lots here are vacant. So you think all of these?
Well, some of those are demolished.
Right. Yeah.
I hadn't gotten that far, but it is a prettier section than some, and would be more peaceful for the people living in the area, but would accommodate light commercial.
But it could also accommodate residential, right?
Yes.
I would envision that as one of your mixed usage with, like, offices on the first floor and maybe, condos or something above.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Could be live work housing or condos.
Yes.
Agreed.
There's another thing that can be done somewhere. John, you want to tell them about your idea of the carousel?
Go ahead, Nance.
Well, we visit Nederland, Colorado fairly often, and they have in the middle of town a delightful old style carousel. And then there's an ice cream place right near it too. And this is the sort of thing, there's a lot of children in White Rock. And it's the sort of thing that families could say, oh yes, we're gonna take you out for an evening of riding the carousel once. And then an ice cream. And I just think you might get a lot of business at something of that nature. It would be good both winter and summer because it's covered, etc.
You said
Nederland, Colorado.
It's up above Boulder and basically in the hills, in the foothills above Boulder.
Yeah, I don't think the TH belongs in there, but yeah.
No, it's NEDER.
Also, while you're highlighting things, just below the Rigoberto's Taco Shop, there used to be an UPEX there. It doesn't show up as vacant, but I don't know if there's any businesses in what used to be an UPEX, like shipping receiving area. It's on Bonneview Drive, and I don't know if that's an available area, but there's two buildings that are listed vacant right there in your map. That whole little quadrant just above the yellow square you drew seems like a prime housing redevelopment area possibly too.
Mm-hmm.
Right in here?
Yes, right in that area, right where the two V's are, and then going further north, there's a white building that's not listed as vacant, but I don't think there's anything in there. Yeah, I don't know what's in there.
So all of this?
So I missed the UPEX and the shipping, but I think there's something in that building now. I don't recall. I've seen it. I don't
recall. Chiropractor might still be there.
Okay, so everything south of the Arroyo then?
Yeah, okay. I wasn't aware there was a business in there. So yeah, I guess everything south of the Arroyo.
Well, there may still be some openings. This building, the white one just by the tacos, it has several storefronts.
Okay.
So that maybe, and as John mentioned, we have to go clear up to downtown Los Alamos to use UPEX facilities.
Yes.
And that's something most of us miss.
But I think, this is John Boltice again, I think as a master planning exercise, that's a very underutilized building. It's mostly vacant. There might be something in there, but if we're looking at redeveloping and getting a larger parcel for redevelopment, I would include it. And then one other thought or just piece of information is related to the ice cream shop and the carousel. We get tens of thousands of visitors that park in the visitor center area and take a shuttle bus down to Bandelier. This is in normal times, not currently in COVID times, but in normal times, we've got a lot of visitation from outside the community that uses that shuttle system that I think, coming out after spending an afternoon in Bandelier walking around, I'd love to take my family somewhere like that. So just a comment again.
So are you looking more for those activities to happen on that site, or are you looking for connections from that site to other things?
Yeah, I think, wherever they could make a go of it. Okay. There's not a ton of available space on the north side of 4, so it would likely be on the south side. But if you can make it work on the north side, that would be even more convenient for the public.
Yeah. It would potentially work. It would potentially work on the south there, if it's walking distance from the visitor center, because you do get a lot of people who parking their RVs there and going into the park. So they'd probably want to, when they come back, have a place they can walk to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it would draw people across the highway,
Right.
and give more business perhaps for other things.
Exactly.
Just jumping back to this white building here quickly, in terms of uses for that building, was the consensus that this would stay commercial and retail, or was there thinking on other uses for that site?
I can't, we're not.
It's affordable.
I would consider that to be redeveloped and put the UPEX on the lower level of the mixed development on Longview.
It's interesting that the carousel attraction that was mentioned in Netherlands. I was also working with another small community in Colorado who was trying to do something similar in terms of their village center is to build a carousel and then get a coffee shop, ice cream parlor or something nearby as something to be kind of a focal point, a family-oriented focal point within that node.
Okay.
What about the I can't move my cursor. Yeah, right up there by the white building, mm-hmm. there's a beige sort of units. Are those unoccupied or are those not occupied now? Yes, there, right there where you're pointing. Mm-hmm. Are those, could those be redeveloped?
They are, they're either apartments or townhouses, something of that nature. Last I saw, they were occupied, but due to the pandemic, I haven't been over there much.
Well, maybe I'm looking in the wrong, oh, I see. I'm thinking of where the V is. Those are hardly ever used.
Right, they're
always, they're empty all the time.
Right. Well, I think they're labeled as vacant, so.
Yeah, but you're asking ideas on how to,
right,
what to allow use in there.
And what are you suggesting for use?
I certainly not commercial because they're out of sight from people going on Route 4.
Right.
So
maybe some additional infill housing of some kind.
Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
It would be exciting to have that area more active and more attractive. We've just lost our Chinese restaurant, which is tragic. It was one of the best Chinese restaurants in the county, mm-hmm. Little Saigon. Now that's going to be that'll be a vacant building.
And where is that? Where is that located? Right there, yeah.
No.
Oh, no.
Under the V.
You go down Longview Drive, and it was in there, wasn't it?
No, that's the bilingual school.
Okay, then it's over where the V is now, yeah.
Further up.
Go above the W.
No, not
go
there.
Above, straight up, yeah. That
red roof building between the two vacant buildings that you've already identified.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
And I don't know the reasons for closing. They sort of got us through the pandemic when we needed a special meal takeout, but they're not visible there, and they don't advertise along Route 4 that much. So I think location was a disadvantage for commercial success. I don't know, Roger may have some ideas about that, but it certainly was a wonderful restaurant. If we could bring it back so it's visible on Route 4.
You know, one thing, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but just next to Smith's, there's a V. Do you see where I can think? Yeah, that one. The building next to it with a dark roof is Beehive, an assisted living. Something about senior apartments might be nice there, or something to link together with that.
You mean in all of this area that we've highlighted in yellow?
No, not the whole, well, I mean, that's an option too, but we have a growing senior population, and next to Beehive, the dark roof, it looks very out of place. It's just there in the parking lot and is not at all attractive, but the actual business is very nice. If you added some independent living senior apartments or some attractive component, benches, whatever, for people, that might be a way to enhance that area.
Okay.
Well, perhaps we should move on to some of the other questions we need to cover here before we wrap up this session.
Yeah.
So under transportation, under circulation, what are the primary circulation routes through the White Rock downtown? And then second question is to identify where good pedestrian and bicycle connections or routes can be implemented.
Well, I'll start. I go to Smith's, I go to the post office, I park in front of Smith's and walk across the post office, get back in my car and go over to Metzger's and pick up whatever I need. If I need gas, I go to the gas station, and then now that Metzger's doesn't do gas, I have to go to Speedway, and then I go to Del Norte and do my business there. So it's park, move, park, move, and park. And then I go home, or I go off to Santa Fe or uptown. So I don't walk that whole area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't bicycle either. So that's just an old lady's response.
It's interesting. Nancy Bartlett, I think, doesn't live that far from where I do. And I normally use Longview or Grand Canyon. And I think Longview, would get a lot more traffic if it didn't have that huge jog in it.
I sometimes go that way, but yeah.
So you think we should straighten out the roadway on Longview?
It would be very easy to do because there is a piece of it. There's actually a piece that goes straight through, or almost straight through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the priority road is the jog.
Right.
In fact, possibly that would be a nice way to develop the multi-usages. You might even keep the jog, but have it not be the main road. Make it a little more intimate in there.
Mm-hmm.
We also rent a rental unit at the self-storage. So I go there now and then, not all the time.
So our family drives to Smith's, like if we're getting a big load. And so typically we take Aztec to Sherwood to get to Smith's. But when we're biking, we like using Longview because there's the Cañada del Buey Trail, which is the green line there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to go through Longview because you don't have that much traffic. It is twisty, windy, which keeps the cars from driving fast. And you can utilize that trail to safely get across Rover and then to safely get all the way to Smith's and then pick a few items and then bike back home. So
you'd like to see like a bike lane that kind of continues on somewhat like this?
I don't think it really needs a bike lane because right now it's twisty and windy, and so cars don't really like to go through some of those streets in there. Longview sort of breaks off into two, which is that red line that you drew. Cars don't like to go down it because they put speed bumps in there, but for bikes, it's not a problem. So it just makes it safer in there for walking or biking, and discourages cars from being there or going, at least driving slow.
So it could be almost like a shared roadway.
Yeah.
Because I don't think bikes like speed bumps any more than cars do, really. So, but it could.
I would like to second.
Could be marked for bikes.
Yeah, I'd like to second the comment about the Bowie Trail being a nice pedestrian way. I think if we did straighten out Longview and engineered it in a way that would keep speeds down and make it safe for bicycles, like you said, even some pavement markings can help with that. That would make that redevelopment parcel a lot more attractive to a developer because it wouldn't have a road going through the middle of it. And I think, it gives an opportunity for development of a true pedestrian way and bike way, kind of midway through all the commercial area that exists there now.
Yeah.
And then the other, just in terms of circulation generally, I think both Sherwood and Rover are wide enough to do, some bike amenities there as well, that feed into the neighborhood streets where you don't necessarily need any, distinct bikeways.
I'm sorry, what were those two roads?
Just the Sherwood and Rover Boulevard.
Do they currently, I know you mentioned they could use bike lanes. Do they have sidewalks as well?
Yeah, I know that there's some sidewalks in front of Smith's. There's some sidewalks in front of the library.
Yeah.
I don't think they're continuous on both of those streets though.
I think you're right.
I think they go down to sidewalks on one side on Sherwood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then on Rover, well, it's a good question. We've got the parking lot there, but I think there's sidewalk. I'd have to go out there, that like the previous commenter was saying, you don't really feel comfortable walking around there. So I don't think people do a lot of it, even if there is a kind of a segmented sidewalk.
My personal opinion of bike lanes versus a bike path, I don't like bike lanes, especially when you're biking with kids. Even though there's a designated bike lane, cars don't seem to be very cognizant, even though you're in a bike lane. So personally, when I bike, especially with my kids, I like to use bike paths over a bike lane. So I'd rather have like a smaller street that's not used very much, or a bike path that's not used at all by cars rather than a bike lane. That's just my opinion.
And I agree with that, especially on State Road 4. And we do have a nice path along State Road 4 on the south side. So maybe something similar to that, could be built on or reoriented Longview. And I don't know, like enhanced sidewalks in the other streets possibly.
You haven't witnessed the traffic that we used to have before the pandemic at the commuting hours. Sometimes the traffic light at Sankoe, the cars would be backed up to Rover, coming between 4:45 and 5:30, maybe even 6 o'clock.
Actually, they back up to La Vista.
Oh, all right. Well, it's a traffic hazard, and it's partly, I wish I were a policeman and I would be at the corner there and having the cars not have 2 or 3 or 4 lengths between them, because they cause a backup to the town, to the master, to the Rover, to where people would go into the, use the commercial district at that time. And I presume that will happen again, and we'll have more traffic as the lab hires more people. I don't know all of that, but I just pointed out to the transportation committee, maybe you already know it, but if you don't, I can tell them more about it, because I would be coming home about that time, and from either the town side or from Santa Fe, and to see the cars lined up, it's such a waste of time. It's the laboratory, the hours and the time of the people sitting in a line in the cars waiting to go home is just beyond me.
So you need to fix it down at the at Sanqui at the truck route. So they need, you know, what I would suggest, if you're not going to enlarge the highway, which may be difficult with Pueblo, but the
well, that's I understand that the plan to fix it has been in the works for several and postponed. I don't. Roger may know more about it.
So I can speak to that real briefly. We just got the environmental document for the development of that intersection cleared. So that was one of the major holdups. The funding is available. It's a project that's Alana lead. So the county's not leading that, but the money is available to move that forward. And now that the environmental document is complete, hopefully we'll see some movement there, because that's exactly where the pinch point is.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad.
So maybe we should segue into the last section here on building forum. And Jessica, you covered that in the earlier presentation. You want to ask the questions there?
Sure. So, I mean, we did hear a little bit from you all already that you would like to see, especially the commercial buildings, being oriented closer to Highway 4 to create more of a Main Street feel. But the last kind of piece we need to just cover, and sort of quickly, because we're running out of time pretty fast here, is to kind of use some of these development types that we covered in the presentation to kind of place some of the things you would like to see on the map. And the idea here is just to kind of get the idea of like the big picture. Obviously, that whatever configurations these buildings are in aren't going to necessarily be the final output, but in terms of those commercial pieces that you want to see closer to the street, is there a commercial product kind of type that we covered earlier that people are more drawn to? Like, are you thinking that there are going to be freestanding pads similar to what we talked about? Do you envision more kind of mixed use buildings along the highway there, or strip, like a commercial strip? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, this is Nancy Bartlett. I certainly wouldn't want a 2 or 3 or 4 story building put along Route 4 like that, but I wouldn't mind a 3 or 4 story building back where we talked about redevelopment.
Back in the Longview area?
In the Longview area, because that's kind of a little bit of a hollow. And as you come down coming from Bandelier and going down, I don't think that the height of that building would destroy the view of the Sangres. But I think it would be ugly and inappropriate to be along Route 4, or it should be stepped back, and the height limitation should be considered by having a blend with the other buildings.
Okay, so in terms of the buildings along, I mean, the commercial buildings along the highway, if we do 1 story, are you thinking more of like a commercial strip or like single building pads? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Or for, I mean, I think what we just heard is higher buildings back in this building. Is there a preferred kind of housing type people would like to see? The more townhouses, more multifamily, mixed use?
I'll chime in about the Mexico State Road 4. Currently, there's a Hampton Inn that's at least 2 stories.
Yeah.
The fire station's at least got to be 2 or 3 stories tall. So I can't see why the parcels that are, you know, really close to the fire station be a 2 or 3 story type of. I really like the mixed use, small to large, where there could be a potential of townhomes up above a commercial space down below or something in that type of selection, at least in those areas.
Along the freeway or along the highway?
Yes, along the highway, especially down near the fire station, because there's already tall structures there that don't seem to be inhibiting any views. Like she mentioned, and the Pizza Hut's sort of a 1.5 story tall. But yeah, as you go up closer to the library, you probably don't want 2 to 3 story tall buildings, because then, yeah, you do start to run into some of the view issues. But
Yeah.
down by the fire station, down by the Rigoberto's Taco Shop and the Hampton Inn, those are all at least 2 30-story tall buildings right now.
Okay. So like on this pad, for example, that's empty, you would be okay with like having a larger, like a taller building?
I don't see why not. The Hampton Inn's already a 2 to 3 story building, and then the what's the training centers are there, and it's kind of sunken down because it kind of sinks down in that area where the
Yeah.
grade level sort of drops off in that area.
And are you thinking like for that particular site there, would you want to see just a purely commercial building or more of a mixed use building?
I think commercial is probably more prevalent because you got the gas stations and things in that area already. So it seems to mix in to be more commercial in that area, especially since it's a big intersection with the main 2 roads of Rover and State Road 4.
So like a strip or a pad, or we have this micro concept too that we talked about that could stack things like shipping containers.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is hard to decide the type of properties, but I would say probably the micro. I mean, one of the biggest things that Los Alamos struggles with is having rent that's cheap enough for businesses to stay alive. And I think if you get too big of a commercial center, no one's going to buy it, no one's going to move in.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you have a smaller segmented, maybe the rents would be viable for businesses to survive. That's just my thought, but anyway.
Yeah, the micro building space lends itself to startups or businesses that, you know, can get started with can be subsidized with smaller rents as well.
We used to have a movie theater and also a thriving Mexican restaurant down in White Rock. That changed when there was construction on the roads and the laboratory people couldn't get back to work over the lunch hour, and that destroyed that restaurant's location there. So can you believe we used to have a movie theater? Right, Roger? Is he still on? He may not be on.
What about for the Longview area? Does anybody have any thoughts on product types that they would like to see there?
Well, I think you have to ask who the owner what they want to see, rather than us telling them what we would like, and because they own the property. But so I think residential of some type would be more appropriate than the 1-story commercial that was there before.
So yes, I thought since we talked about the multi-use with housing above and offices or whatever below a small shop.
And an area like that would lend itself more to maybe some trees with some benches to kind of give it a less thrown together nature. Looked like it had a plan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is Wendy. I would say that definitely more towards residential, less towards commercial, but I think mixed would be wonderful to have some live workspace, and then to also have some businesses on the street, but allow for living quarters up above. I think that would just make that a much better place than what it was.
So the other group is like a little further along. So we need to hurry this up a little bit so that we can get together in about 10 minutes. So if possible, let's try to place some more buildings and uses, and then in 5 minutes, maybe let's just like put our heads together and think about what this version of redevelopment or downtown master plan concept is good at and what the drawbacks are.
May I ask a question about master plan?
Yes.
Because my concept of a master plan is a place where we can congregate, like Ashley Pond or Overlook Park for the 4th of July, or some kind of, and I don't see any place in White Rock for something like that to happen. At one time we did have concerts and all in front of where the laboratory training center is, but it still was limited in terms of parking and then having the featured event. So when I think about master planning, I'm thinking about where would there be a central area that people would have, and I don't see that for White Rock, but if you could enlighten me on what you're thinking about what a master plan is, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I think a master plan to us is kind of the overall concept of development for the larger area. But you make a very good point that that one of the things that we would like to identify is where there are those kinds of public spaces, civic spaces, gathering spaces like Ashley Pond that could be built here. As you say, there really isn't any. There's a lot of park land behind the library, but it's pretty much undeveloped. I guess the activity center and some of the development around it is creating a public space, but that's more of a public space for kids. So where else and what other types of gathering spaces could be built here in White Rock?
So we're not going to anything as large as Ashley Pond or where the fireworks go, but you know that center kind of triangle with the little, where the V is, the brown V that we put in the middle above the parklet, below that, right? Yeah, right there. I mean, if you could put.
John, I think you're muted. We can't hear you.
Okay, so I'm just looking, there's that new V we put in next to the, right there.
Yeah.
So that funny shaped area with the trail that goes by it, and then hopefully a calming, influence there on the long view. That could be a plaza, with maybe.
You mean here, right? Like in between the buildings?
Yeah, I think that a lot of that whole area, then you could put some of your small shops, the micro shops along there for, serve somewhere in there, you'd put a plaza anyway, maybe. It's kind of in the center.
And it'd be nice to have a connection to the trail there as well.
It'd be a smaller plaza, but yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So as Katrina mentioned, they're asking us to report back to the larger group in terms of the strengths and the weaknesses of the concept that we've come up with here. It feels to me like we've identified mostly areas of opportunity, but we've also identified some of the areas that it constrains. So it's a little hard for me to figure out how we do that. You have any thoughts, Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the concepts that came up when we were talking is, you know, we have two kind of general centers of activity, and then it seems like there is a lot of consensus that there's still redevelopment potential within what's kind of the existing commercial node. So does everybody agree that this frontage along the highway, it seems like people generally want to see remain mostly commercial?
And that the redevelopment is more focused along Longview and the interior.
Yeah.
And then we've got the street, we've got the, I guess, pedestrian connections or bike connections between Sherwood back to Longview.
Yes, and I would just say we need to make the highway, so it's not too bad through town. They've done some plantings and things there, particularly on the south side, but we need some more green material in there and some more pleasant walkways. And I would say you could almost put your little parklet between Highway 4 and the new subdivision, because it's ugly. They put the big concrete walls up and took down the landscaping that was put in when the highway was improved.
Yes.
And it needs to be greened up, and there needs some trees along there as well as in downtown.
Sorry, that was along the highway, or?
Yes.
Along the highway on the north side, mostly all the way down, but particularly in front of those ugly concrete concentration walls they put up.
You mean along the Mirador frontage?
Mirador, yes, along
Right.
Mirador.
What they put up you say they put up a wall along there?
Yes, and they cut down the native trees and bushes that were growing along the right of way. We haven't talked about landscaping, but I think that was very, very strong in the results of the survey.
You're right. You're right about that. Any other locations where additional landscaping is desired?
We're getting there, Katrina.
Hey.
Oh, this is Wendy. I was just going to say there's some opportunity, I think, for more landscaping between the bike trail along State Road 4 and State Road 4 itself.
How much separation is there between the bike path and the road?
It depends. It curves.
It curves. Uh-huh. Is it on the north side or the south side?
It's on the south side of State Road 4, okay. Between Sherwood and Rover.
Okay. So
I'm not sure that's exclusively a bike trail, though. I think I see most people walking on it, so it needs to accommodate both.
Right. It's a multimodal path.
That's right.
So would you say then, I mean, it sounds like people are kind of asking for Main Street-like improvements along the highway, like you're wanting buildings to kind of front the street a little more, you're wanting more enhanced landscaping. So is that kind of one of the central themes that you think is coming out of this?
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. I mean, the hard thing that I think one of the other people mentioned is on the north side, there's not a lot we can do because of the fire station. I mean, you mentioned one thing with the fire station repurposed, but on the south side is where we have the most opportunity, and having a welcomed downtown feel with businesses up against the road is probably the biggest opportunity that I see.
I would extend that to both Sherwood and Rover, just like you see in most main streets. There are streets that come off the main street that still have that main street feel. So, redeveloping the Smith's parking lot at some point so that Smith's is closer to the road, things like that.
Yeah, Rover could definitely, the east side of Rover could definitely use some landscaping there as well.
And you want to accentuate the 6 pots that were a joint project with San Ildefonso in Los Alamos. the people of the Pueblo, the artisans who worked on those, are emotionally attached to that project because some of the pots were designed by grandparents. And so they're sort of sprinkled along Route 4, and you kind of see them behind a tree or a bench or something, but any kind of landscaping should point them out and have people enjoy them more than just kind of a glance as they drive by. Would be a beginning point of landscape design, I think. I would hope.
Okay, we probably should wrap it there. And
Dan, you want to just quickly do weaknesses? If anybody sees any weaknesses, we don't have anything for that.
Well, I think you've got the strengths, okay?
Yeah.
So Jessica's question was, are there weaknesses to the concepts that we've drawn here? I think we've tried to mostly be positive about where we think the opportunities are, but.
So one weakness would be just pet access across the highway, NM4. It doesn't exist now in any, what I would call.
Oh,
we lost you.
Sorry about that. Not sure what happened there, but I would just say the NM4 is kind of a barrier. So pedestrian access across NM4, I think, is a weakness. So how we solve that, I don't know. But
is another light needed there?
Is it possible that when that intersection was worked on and the road was improved, that they designed underground pipes for us to put in the wiring? I know we worked on taking down a wire that I think was associated with either the telephone or the television and put it underground and under the road when that intersection was improved. But Denny Erickson would know, or people who work at the county would know whether that was part of the scope of the work of improving Route 4 there. Mm-hmm. It may be we'll need a light there.
Yeah.
I just got a message from Katrina that we are about to be kicked out of the room and put back into the larger group to present these ideas. Is there anyone that wants to kind of be a spokesperson for the group and kind of talk about some of these strengths of the plan that we all came up with?
Somebody to take the lead. Well, we can all pipe in and jump in and reinforce that. So who would like to take the lead?
Anybody on from the county that's on this segment here on this side?
So this is John. So I'll do it as long as everybody helps out.
Sure.
Okay, John. Thank you for volunteering. We'll back you up. So.
Do we click on leave break room, or do
yes, you should click on that, and we'll all be back in the larger group. So thanks for your participation.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.